ordinance review today. Today's August 14th, 4 o'clock, and we have an in-person forum. Margaret Thomas, Sean Enright, Nussberg, and Garrett Thomas. Julie Thomas is unable to join us today, so we do have 3 people in person, and that constitutes a forum. So we can go ahead and get started.
I was just going to mention, and I don't think it will matter too much. I will have to leave around 5:15.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we will. City Plan Commission, I got sub-area in there, so I'll probably be down here until 10 o'clock.
So the first item on the agenda is a discussion about an amendment to the signs chapter. So this is being proposed due to one of the lawsuits that the county is involved in. The edits are allowing us to have a time and procedure requirement placed in the ordinance. So all the items in purple are changing. There's some formatting changes that we're going to go ahead and go through to make sure this is clean. The items in green are actually just moved, and then strike through is strike through. So some of this is similar content to before, but we wanted to better describe the information about, what the application entails, what the applicant will be required to provide, and then a timeline for us to review. So for instance, timing, procedure, and exemptions. This section is new, and that's with help from our legal department putting that together. So for instance, we will have 7 business days from receipt to, deny an application, and we'll have to notify them both by mail and on the permitting site. And we also have a way of making sure that if they do not have access to the internet, that we could send them paper application as well. So that, yep.
Question. So once a person or an entity submits the application, then the director has to give comments within 7 days, or just say they've accepted it and it's under review.
So the first step in the process will be, this is a completed application. So let's say they file and they don't have a complete application, we would notify right away to say you were missing this, and it would not start that timeline.
Okay. But the question is the 7 days, something you guys can manage on approval.
Yeah, I think that the reason 7 days was chosen was based on case law. I did have commented that whether we could extend that out to maybe like 10 business days. That would give us a bit of a buffer, but we can then take that question.
Just thinking of staff and what that could get into, especially if we're trying to meet staff, this is because of the
Right.
cases on this.
The presumption, if they don't receive a response back, is that the application has been denied.
Well, I think it may be the opposite. Maybe it could be approved.
I thought it said, is that incorrect in the language? It says the director's failure to serve notice of permit decision on the applicant within 7 business days of application receipt may be treated as a denial.
Okay.
By the applicant.
Okay.
So that means that you don't have the risk, is that right? But it puts a bigger burden on the business if they have to apply again in 7 days. Right. So that there's a tension there.
Yeah, I assume that like Jackie said, it would imply denial, or pardon me, acceptance. Because you snooze, you lose type thing. It's gonna say what you said.
On page 6, but I don't know, is that legal?
I don't know. This is what Margie is looking to put on staff to be able to get the application, review it, check it check it.
Yeah.
And make sure the application was filed properly.
Right.
And then to make a determination. Does this include site plan, everything on where it is, setbacks, completing right away, all that stuff.
They would have like a drawing, I'm not sure if we would make it be certified.
Mm.
It would, yeah, it would have to include all the information as to how many signs they're asking for, how many signs are existing, you know, where those signs are located, their measurements, things like that. So we would have to at least see there was a complete application first, and then we would be able to have that amount of time to accept the filing. So I think there might be some buffer room to say in the first step that we have as, you know, administering the ordinance, we might be able to say, we will get back to you to say whether this is a complete application, we could do a preview, and then maybe the 7 days start.
Yeah.
I'll get
I
confirmation.
would think that, and then I would suggest that, and I'm not, if it has anything to do with its location relative to private land. It's gonna sound like I'm leaning towards requiring surveys for everything. I'm not that guy. But if it depends on whether it's in public right of way or not. If they're just pulling stuff on GIS, that's haphazard at best.
Right.
No offense to the GIS system, but it really is. I mean, there's just so many.
Well, they have a setback requirement. I believe it's 10 feet from right of way. So we'd have that buffer. But I see your point. If we had to determine that they had to get a variance or something, or they had to get.
And the reason why I bring that up is we get a lot of applications for people wanting to encroach on our right of way. And they just hobnob stuff in that isn't justified on where their land is coming from. So, I mean, I've got ways to help them around it, but if, just saying, I mean, that timeline and whether or not it needs to be certified, there ought to be some sort of confirmation that they are placing it outside the public right of way.
Okay.
So that would be effective, but that's just a thought.
I'm just thinking of the administrative details of what you described of, you receive the application, you acknowledge receipt of the application, and then you say you're gonna get back to them. I think that all of those steps could potentially create a nightmare with what is spelled out here.
Yeah.
That if you know, because you're interceding and saying something other than what the ordinance says.
Yeah.
So I don't think you want to do that, place yourself in that position. And one suggestion is to be more clear, rather than saying, you know, may be treated as a denial by the applicant, you can say will be treated as a denial or something.
I was speaking along that one. That does not constitute approval. Is outside of treated like a denial, because it's the same meaning, but it just gives clarification to the applicant. If 7 days elapsed, it's not constituted as an approval, which means you still have to give them a firm denial, which I think.
But Jackie's legally through this, and she's thinking that might be statutory.
Oh, that if, well, I guess from my understanding, it's treated as a denial, right?
Yeah. And I'd be more firm with that and say will be treated as a denial. And not add the administrative stuff that could interfere with the intention of that entire paragraph.
Okay.
You know,
I think, for instance, if you file a notice of, and believe me, it's been years now, but you file a notice of intent with IDEM, right, you kick it over to the local used to be called Soil Conservation Service, now it's the DNR. If you send it and they don't have comments, they've got 30 to 45 days to offer comments on the plan, right? It's accepted as approved
Right.
That's right.
with IDEM.
and we had that too with the county.
And a lot of things that they would tell you, like North Green County, or I think it's Mrs. Reed or whoever was in Monroe County at the time, and various counties. It was an unfunded mandate, but all of a sudden I didn't put that on the state DNR chapters, DNR areas with the SCS going on years and years ago, and I started pushing. So they didn't necessarily have the manpower, the people to be able to review the plans properly, right? So they just said, well, you're the professional engineer, designer, plan surveyor, whoever. Regardless of who you sign up on, you need to have that. One parliament of intent, and then you would open the adjustment to the field. You know, to do that. Again, because I was going to reduce the we really not a problem. Right, because we, as if you're making the decisions anyway.
Right.
So anyway, just that,
Right,
it's contrary to what legal seems to think happens.
right. And we had that in the county during COVID. There was a development where because they had not heard within 30 days, it was automatically approved. But I don't know if this is sufficient to say, no, it's a denial. You know, that's because it deviates from standard practice.
But this time frame has to be in there. And you
The
think,
purpose of the amendment is to add time frames. I'm not sure that this exact time frame, like the 7 days is a requirement. We'll ask if we can extend that. If we could extend that, what would the group think would sound reasonable?
Creatively, I'm having difficulty imagining this because, you know, the mail service, like now when I mail something, it may take up to 7 days to get to the destination. Even here from Bloomington to Bloomington, because it first has to go to Indianapolis. And so I'm administratively having a difficult time understanding how the records will be kept. And so I just want to mention that because maybe, are they online applications?
There
Okay,
are.
well, that'll take care of that. Okay.
I think it depends on what's legal. What the minimum standard is that legal's telling you.
Okay.
And then secondly, what your office can support.
Right.
I mean, I'm all about time and turnaround, but again, my whole thought on bringing the question up is to protect staff. On a timeline that's sooner than what we can comfortably manage, and then we're back in this situation where someone's suing staff or suing the county because we're not turning something loose within the timeline. And you see what I'm saying? My concern, but if Debbie says it's gotta be within 7 days, then that's what it has to be.
Right.
But I'm wondering about businesses that don't have internet, how do they deal with the submission?
So it does say that,
Oh, yeah.
let's see. Sign applications that are complete and that propose signs that comply with the provision of this chapter shall be approved by the director within 7 business days.
Have you been served on the permittee on the later date of mailing or website posting, but that's from you. I just,
It says an applicant desiring a sign permit shall apply for the permit on the online permitting website available through the Monroe County Planning Department's webpage. Persons lacking access to the online permitting website may request the planning department to mail them a hard copy, i.e. paper, of the sign permit application. So we would have to receive written sign permit application. We would stamp that in as when we received it, and then our office manager would actually put that online. She would actually help digitize it, and then we would have to, once complete, send them mail notice if it were denied.
okay, I'm feeling like an old person now.
But I think, this is only a mail notice in the event that the sign is denied. So if the
Right.
signs are approved, we could just, go through the process.
Okay,
Still within the 7 business days, but
yeah,
we wouldn't have to mail every approval.
Okay.
Denial should be less frequent, but could be.
But it goes back to what Brian was saying. Don't we have some language maybe in our certified site plan, that allows planning the discretion they need to ask for a survey if it looks like it is approaching in the right of way? And couldn't we just incorporate some of that language? But I would really weigh heavy on allowing discretion for planning to determine if it's needed or not, so we don't run the risk of asking everyone for a survey. I agree with that. Also, I just want to kind of clarify what I was saying, because I think the concern here is that planning can't act fast enough. No one perceives it's approved. So first and foremost is really kind of making sure you have the ability to administrate this, but then also the reason I was thinking that it's not treated as an approval is because maybe staff wouldn't necessarily deny it if they didn't have time to get to it and reply back. So that was kind of bringing in the petitioner or the requestee, if you will, into this conversation too. I don't know if that's the right type of language. If it's not, it doesn't constitute approval, because then that might give some flexibility on the administrative side to then, follow up in several days with an approval or a denial. But I'm just trying to clarify what I was trying to say. So it relates more to what our discussion is.
So you would change the,
Well,
or,
I don't know if I would say I would change or suggest changing. I'm just saying that it looks like what we're trying to prevent is someone thinking they get approval because there wasn't a follow-up and we didn't have time to respond. But as long as we know it doesn't constitute approval, is it really a denial? Should it be a denial within 7 days because planning wasn't able to turn it around, or should it just not constitute as an approval, which then gives planning some additional time to maybe evaluate it and then, go ahead and deny and approve? That's kind of where my thoughts are, and I just wanted to elaborate on that just a bit, because that, I think ultimately fixes the issue of someone assuming it's an approval for not getting a follow-up in 7 days. But if it's treated as a denial, does that mean they have to then go through the whole process again? And should we be doing that? That's more of a legal question. That's just kind of my thought process. I just wanted to expand on it.
Good, and so that actually follows through to this page 7, that first paragraph there, because, that paragraph doesn't contend with the passive denial, where no decision is rendered. What is the date that they would be considered to have been denied if it doesn't give a date, if no official decision is made? It's
That
just-
would be that sentence, right? It would be the beginning of the day.
Okay. I'm thinking.
This is correct. Or the Methodist law, the Methodist law would apply.
so notices of sign must identify all reasons. And then notices of permit decision shall be entered on the website, shall be mailed US first class to the applicant at the address set forth in the permit application. Notice shall be deemed to serve the applicant on the later date of the mailing postmark or website posting. I think originally, I have a question for our legal department, because I think originally, Margaret, it was mailed receipt, and we couldn't promise that, because that would mean we'd have 3 days to
Right.
deny permit. So
Exactly.
if we postmark it though, I think we could,
Just asking if the application phase, maybe you could have maybe you could have an option for you to prefer registered mail
okay,
or.
as an application.
It's gonna be via the website,
Yeah.
unless otherwise notice that we want to return.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
I mean, it just puts almost all little things that are, things you get to do on every single application. It's kind of like an application PDD, right? Every little do that, so, okay. Very owning me, because one of my questions, I'm not squeezing in on Trump on this time, but if you have a site plan where a site plan approval, if they get signage, is that the one that sign from an application is approved as your site plan?
We used to do it that way. Right now, we are not able to issue sign permits.
Okay.
So this issue is resolved.
Okay, so if somebody shows a sign on the site, to prematurely submit for a sign permit application before it's, I mean, clearly it's pretty good, the sign permit we did at, Rogers and Countryside, the
Okay.
gas station,
Yeah, they put their signs on the site.
so, but we came in,
They also needed variances.
they needed variances, and so if they would show the sign location on their site plan, or before the site plan is done, you couldn't necessarily approve that because the sign location may alter something else that you need to do at the site plan.
Right.
So I don't know if you want, I could just see the county getting into a twist because someone could craft in a sign permit application and not be relevant, and you couldn't approve it before the site was done. If it's just a freestanding site where Margaret's got her business and second and Rogers and Henry farm, it's already done, she was supposed to add a sign and not run something and another something to they were part of the big package. That you wouldn't be able to do 7 days because you got other things you need to
Oh, that's,
have been really in advance. It'd be the tail lighting done.
yeah,
I don't know, I mean,
yeah,
I get my whole revenue that staff from the county from a suit and staff and being put in a situation where they can't meet the rule that they have.
right.
And maybe there's no way to get it out, maybe there's 7 days, that's it.
Right.
There's your cut date, and you'll be done.
If we could extend it to maybe 14 days, 14 business days.
After acceptance is been made.
And that was gonna be my question.
Because it says that sign applications that are complete are approved within 7 business days, so I know what you're saying, Margaret, I would rather it say like the timeline begins once the staff states that the application is complete, which they are, maybe we can even say staff has 3 business days to identify whether the application is complete, and they have 14 business days to review the application.
There's a lot of communication
I
there's
know.
to do.
Then, moving timelines with the, I actually have this one up before the other stuff, but, so if it's done, that's that. And they want to appeal, they appeal to the BZA within 10 days, is that correct?
Yes.
So does that mean that they make formal notice to staff under a BZA petition within 10 days? If they say they want to be on the agenda, the next agenda, or the next practical agenda?
So we have 30 days to hear and appeal. So I think the 10 days from the letter is just to make sure that they get it in within that time period, that then we can put it on the agenda, the next agenda.
So then it has to be on the next agenda. You have to put it,
We didn't have a question today as to whether this could be more like 40 days, just
Okay.
to give us some protection of the month. Yeah,
the same with BZA agendas in mind, and if you've got a kid, just slide it in and under, I think any other new business that you've got coming. And then, because I'm assuming you manage new business based on what your own business.
yeah.
So if you get old business with a 12 cases, and then you slip this in, you're gonna bump somebody off the beach.
Or if they file a week after the deadline and the notice has already gone out, we can't.
Yeah.
Not even one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Seems like you're gonna move pretty quick, so.
No, I think this is all helpful, and I think this had to be done, a while ago, and the decisions that were happening in the court system were kind of one way and then another way, and then, so it's just now coming back to our table to review it, so I think we had some concerns about the timing. But I think this will be helpful if we can get this in really good shape. We can just push this over into the CBO. So our hope is this if you have any other substantial comments or other comments that you wanna see, like even illustrations added in there, you know, we could do that, or we could save some of that for the CDO and then.
That's on the sign from there. I don't think there is, for the sign from the portion, whether it requires a foundation or whether it's two 4x4s and a sheet of plywood.
It's the same application right now.
And then there's something with a foundation. Is it required to go through the building department?
If it has electrical, yes, I
Okay.
think if you're talking about the difference between like a billboard and a,
What, I'm thinking of even a nice brick sign that says Jackie's planning consultant in front of your office, right? And it's got a foundation, it's a nice brick sign with
yeah,
it's more than 32 square feet.
I see.
And because that's a foundation, so then that goes in the building department, even if it doesn't have electricity, right?
Right,
So then does that mess with your timeline here? To go through the building department to get the approval for that?
right,
I'm just trying to think of it different.
yeah,
I'm thinking if I was making an application for the client, what steps I would need to go through and how would be able to advise them on.
Wouldn't that fall in if you determine it's a complete submittal or application?
Do
yeah. We could say it's an incomplete application, I guess, if it needs to go to the building department first. I wonder if that could, but staff would need to have enough of a threshold to know. We would need to know if they
Right.
even apply, we'd have to be quick.
Yeah,
It's something like that, you're gonna have to know the utilities are. You know, whether they could put the foundation in, even 4x4 posting, technically you got utility, okay, but.
We also want to make sure that our regulations in the ordinance are capturing what we're able to capture, in terms of, we don't wanna have to look at the sign to determine, you know, how its review will go. But right now, we still have thresholds for animated signs or digital signs in the ordinance. I just wanna make sure that we're, you know, addressing that appropriately. And I think where we left off with our last sign ordinance amendment is that we still have pole signs, but only in that, so they could be relocations of other pole signs. Does the ordinance review committee think that for the future CDO, you would like to see no more pole signs and only do wall signs, monument signs?
You're not gonna get an opinion from me on that?
Okay,
I think it's case by case type scenario.
I know that the American Planning Association has been maybe recommending that planning and zoning authorities consider whether pole signs are still in line with their vision for the county. When we still have, regulations as it relates to I-69, a lot of people do want pole signs on I-69.
So is a billboard considered a pole sign? Okay. Sorry.
No, yeah, no, it's,
I didn't,
or it could be a billboard, anything on a pole. Yeah, in the air.
if off the top of your head, you know, what is the ugliest pole sign around this county? You know,
I don't get paid that much.
Jackie, do you have an idea? Or I mean, this is not a trick question. I mean, yeah, that's true. I hear you, but if, where, can you think of an example of the ugliest?
Let me rephrase maybe how I would respond. So we have a like a binder of all the legal pre-existing billboards in the county, and then a binder of all the non-conforming
Yes,
illegal billboard signs. So we have to go through that every time a billboard wants to replace any kind of support structure. We have to check to see if it's legal. And then they're only allowed to improve it up to 50% of the support structures at a time.
I see.
So it's very difficult right now to have a new billboard or pole sign, off premise especially. And it's something that I think if we didn't have rules against, there would be more.
Right,
So that,
right. I've never been so offended by billboard signs, but I know they're trying to standardize those monument signs and the other kind of signs, but
and digital signs are becoming more
I hate those.
appropriate. So,
I hate
or
those.
more, I should put the word
you know,
more,
you
like,
look at it, trying to catch it,
yeah.
and you take your eyes off the road and you're
Yeah.
looking for the second go around. If we could prohibit movable digital signs.
Well, you have that, but I think that if, let's say that the courts, cause this is an ever moving subject,
Right.
if they say, hey, you have to look at it to determine it's digital. The next step could say just no pole sign, because really you wouldn't have to see any kind of content. You're looking at like a type or a supporting structure of the sign. So that could be another way of,
Two solutions.
Yes.
Yours.
Yes.
One, you just put two signs, one on the first page and one on the second page. So you can see the second page after you saw the first page. Oh, side is down. And you can look in the rear there. Turn it in reverse. And you can see the second page. So it would be right there.
I think it's hard to like it. Yeah. So these things are dangerous, looking at the sign and it can be dangerous, so we should be thinking about safety.
I don't know what, if I may, I don't know what the APA says with guidance on restricting pole signs, but I remember Larry's presentation, he did one for the APA, Indiana chapter. I think.
Yeah.
And his whole thing about signage was that pole barns are structures.
or pole signs.
Or pole signs, yeah, excuse me. Pole signs, billboards are structures first, they're signs second, because of how large they are.
Yes.
And how much land they can take up. But as for the smaller pole signs, I think that a lot of their, usage is captured with wall signs just the same. I see, people comment on the internet and other places about how, too many pole signs in the community kind of just drags down the aesthetics of it.
Yes.
And I never recognized that Monroe County and City of Bloomington had restricted pole signs until I learned that they did. And then I realized why I like living here so much, because it doesn't feel like your standard Midwestern town. It's just littered with them everywhere. And
Yeah.
all you see driving down the road is pole sign, pole sign, pole sign, pole sign. But that's just,
Those are good insights. Those are good insights. Yeah. Those are good insights. And just, if we can put that into the code.
So does Monroe County, and again, I'm dating myself, but do we have maximum, every time we have significant 50 buildings in the county, and we could increase the number of buildings, is that number still, is it a net zero in the county, or is that passed? You know what the problem is?
I think, was there like a moratorium after a certain number?
At one point in time, we have X number of signs. And this may be just my thumbnail explanation of it. But we have X number of signs, and we couldn't increase the number of signs in the county. So if someone had a sign and they took it away,
Yeah.
then they could have to do some things, but they couldn't have two.
So I think you're maybe referencing two things. So one is the pre-existing billboards, so when the code changed, we made it illegal to have pole signs or build off-premise signs. We documented in time all the signs that were there predating that change. But the other thing that you're referencing is, I think, the relocation of off-premise signage, which allowed them to relocate the sign up to 50% of what the size was prior or something to that effect, and that was for takings of right of way. In instances where the state or the county needed to take right of way and it took out a pole sign, we didn't want to have a moratorium on all pole signs. We wanted to be able to have them relocated back. And that was just to make it so that the county or the state wouldn't have to compensate them a large amount for that sign.
Why wasn't it, when they taking and being able to replace a sign based on a public taking? It was more in lines of, we don't want any more signs.
Okay,
So, and maybe it was per owner. You couldn't increase per owner or countywide. I don't know which it was. So if you own 17 signs in the county, if you remove one, you'd be able to look at replacing them somewhere else. And not just end up with 16, you would still have 17 signs,
okay,
but you could put it somewhere else.
okay,
Within reason, I'm curious, the side distance, pretty good. Where we call them side distance or things like that, intersection, for instance.
okay,
But that may have gone the ways, because the sign ordinance is changing. The sign regulation is changing.
Right.
Because I was working with a client years and years and years ago. Where they were banking a certain number of signs based on that. It didn't go 100%. So.
I don't have too much of a vested interest except for, I don't wanna see, you know, our roads and the interstate looking like, how the city looks with all the birds and scooters just kind of all over the place. I'm wondering if there's any like interest in looking at kind of creating like a sight distance type thing where like you're permitted to have X sign here and not until you get to a certain distance, X sign there, and then that could, if you look at it spatially, eventually that would cap the number of signs because you can only have so many, you know, down a typical stretch of road. Really, I'm more referring to highways and interstates. You know, and again, I don't really have a huge position here. I'm just trying to think of another way where we could address some of the same issues. Where we're not just building rampant pole signs, but we're permitting them with like spacing in between, so it limits it versus maybe putting a cap on it or moratorium on there. But again, I'm just adding some comments. Don't really have a position there or recommendation. So.
Well, they still have to meet certain requirements of other departments. I mean, you can't put a sign that obstructs the side distance of an intersection.
well, we have a 10-foot right of way setback, and then for, I think, there is some sort of like between 2 and 9 feet, you're not allowed to place a sign. But I don't know that our highway department looks at every sign permit application. What we could get,
I think that they should be,
Yeah.
because there's a 25-foot window. Which you can have in each end, and 25 feet of rule of thumb. And if you think on what else is there, elevation grade, et cetera, but I would certainly think that you don't have the ability just to put a sign up because it's a sign. What obstructs, again, that 25 foot.
that would be only for standalone signs, not wall mounted or,
Assumption, because the building. That would be a structure with a definite process, assuming that you have to follow the building.
right. Okay.
And I just want to clarify, since I used the word side distance, I wasn't saying side distance related to highway department, but like from one distance to the next distance and whatever that distance might be, you know, every 500, 1,000, quarter mile. You can have a sign here and a quarter mile down the road, you can have a sign
Oh.
there. So it's just another way of like maybe limiting the amount of signs, you know, and
You mean specific to full sign?
yeah, the full signs, you know, if you have a full sign here, you can't actually put another full sign up until, you know, another half a mile down. Yeah, like a buffer type thing. So I just wanted to clarify since I used the word line of sight. It's just another way to think about it. If we're really trying to prevent too many from coming up, but if it does seem like there's a practical reason or use for one, you can still maybe permit it here and there, but again, don't really have a position in this.
Okay. Any other comments? So the next step for this chapter 807 amendment, would the ORC like to see this again, or should we go ahead and reflect your comments in the next iteration and take it to the plan commission?
I think these two former and current DZA members really went through it pretty
So,
thoroughly, and I think you put in good feedback.
okay, to go to the plan. Yeah, okay, all right, we'll need some time to do that, okay.
And then, like Bernie said, you know, make it good on yourselves, always.
I do wanna let everyone know that, we have updated our studio website to include the work, listening session. And it's kind enough in our office to create a flyer, so we're gonna be having
That's
4 public meetings. We're
That's
gonna
really nice.
Good, did a great job. 4 public meetings and the dates are outlined there, so you'll be getting an email from us about those dates. But I had it on our agenda to look at maybe an example of something in the CDO work, CDO module 2, just to kind of start maybe bringing these up to your attention, because we do get requests a lot of times, especially for uses like RV storage. People ask, can this be an amendment made ahead of the CDO? And we say, we'll take it to the ordinance review committee, but it's likely it needs to wait until the CDO is approved and bring it back in case it's a priority. But we are hearing from people that, you know, a lot of HOAs don't allow RVs to be stored at people's property, so they do need a place for them to go. So using this as just an example in the CDO, what you would do here is review where it's permitted with standards, conditional, and that there would be the conditions at the end of the table. It would be permitted with standards in institutional and light industrial and airport zones, and then conditional and limited business. We don't have it in general business and heavy industrial just because those 2 zones are typically prioritized for large employment generators, and storage is not typically employment generator, not an employment generator. So I just have 2 tabs of the same thing open. If you scroll down to RV/boat storage, the conditions would be that outdoor storage must be screened on all sides by an opaque fence and landscaping that complies with this ordinance. Required principal building setback shall be applied to all boats stored outside. Retail sales of merchandise and/or boat repair services prohibited. Must have a 200-foot setback from rural or residential zone. And then if it's in the airport zone, it has to comply with the height. Offhand, do you have any comments on this?
Are those supplementary conditions for sure they're inconsistent with the convenience storage? Open area?
Currently,
From a condition 1.
Well, just thinking of what the site plan requirements relative between convenience storage and boating RV. I just wanted to boating RV, is it boat and RV or just RV?
this is boat/RV, so we're thinking people can store just boats, just RVs, or a combination of boats and RVs. That's what we've been getting requests for.
And not trailers.
So, all I'm saying is it would be nice, I think, unless it's too onerous on one or the other, to make the site plan requirements same or very same. So if you have, maybe this will, I will really see, but if you have an area that wasn't working out for it, this RV and boat storage is different than convenience storage, correct?
Yeah.
So, and making somewhat, because there's a lot of things about both of them that are, as a homeowner would not want to have one in one area and another in another. Right? I think
As someone using the storage or someone looking at it? Okay,
yes.
okay.
So, and, you know, the homeowners association, by the irony, is, we had the one that was applied for that, Kirby, for that made Fieldstone. And I have to add that, actually, we had a design on that for 1 acre home sites. We got shot down years and years and years ago. And then we got 4 and 5 units per acre, this is 1 unit per acre that we were pitching. But anyway, you know, having those storage areas close to bigger neighborhoods is not necessarily a bad thing, because homeowners associations don't like it. So as much portability within a site, to me, that flexibility would be a good thing.
Yeah, so just to go off of your comment about convenience storage, these are not the same. Convenience storage, there was a prohibition between 500 feet of 37. On-site apartment was permitted, and all materials must be stored indoors. So because RV and boat is outside, there's a lot of building department requirements if you're gonna try and store them
So the
inside.
site plan requirements aren't the same.
They're not,
Right, okay.
but if you wanted, as your comment that you would like to see convenience storage / boat storage / RV storage to have a combination of any of those on one site, or do you see those as two separate uses?
I think they are two separate uses.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of a way, if someone had a convenience storage and for some reason it wasn't very functional, it's typically a higher site plan requirement for convenience storage. I think, how could that be modified easily into RV storage? That's all I was getting.
Okay.
And maybe it's not that, maybe I'm being too simple-minded about it.
Not having a boat or an RV, you know, I can sympathize with neighbors not wanting to have their view blocked when they look out their window by an RV in the neighbor's driveway. But with the homeowners association rule being the element that is precipitating a need to allow RV and boat storage, can we make PUDs, can they be made to provide for X number of RV and boat storage spaces in the PUD? I mean, if you have a neighborhood like Fieldstone, approximately how many RVs and boats do you think?
And then, that's a good question.
And so, I mean, is it possible that the PUD should accommodate such needs of the neighborhood and have some, I mean, this is worth discussing. I don't have any knowledge of all of that, but from a planning perspective, it seems to me that we could do something in the PUD department to help make things a little bit more livable for the residents who buy in to the homeowners association or to the neighborhood, so they don't have to keep incurring more and more expenses just to live their way of life, you know.
But that's in the PUD, right? Of course, it could be part of it, permitting that, and them adopting it, but like, we're more generally speaking about just allowing this type of use, right?
Well, you brought up that homeowners associations are disallowing RVs and boats.
Homeowner associations don't just exist in PUD,
That's right.
you know, so I'm just saying it's a. Like, we actually probably have more leverage as a plan commission to permit that type of use in a PUD, but if we think outside of the PUDs in other neighborhoods, then we don't really have that ability to kind of permit that use that much, you know, where then, you know, they don't put it in the homeowners association. But I agree that if they're not allowing that in neighborhoods and people own RVs and boats, and especially having Lake Monroe, it's gonna continue to show up, and it's gonna probably be proposed in places where might not be ideal, and they have to go through like a rezone and a bunch of other kind of processes. So having it built out in the ordinance, I think is very beneficial. I was following Bernie too, where like, hey, if we're doing conventional storage, is it, and that's not working, is there a way that they can retrofit that to do the RV and boat storage? Possibly, except for they already probably have the building there.
Yeah.
It seems to work the other way around, where the boats in storage and RV storage isn't working. Maybe they could make it into more of a conventional storage thing, and that would be interesting, because then that gives them another option to use that space similar for what they're already using it for. So
Yeah.
I think it's what we can do to make them similar, where they have the ability to pivot and, you know, create another, you know, operation and a different use for that operation. I think is very helpful kind of in the long term. Yeah, it seems like that's something that we need to really kind of focus on, or we're going to just keep seeing these petitions pop up where they want to rezone or something to that effect, where it's meant for boat storage or RV storage. Also just storage in general seems to keep coming up a lot, so that's interesting too. I like the idea where if there is ideal space where they could kind of do all three of them. I mean, if it works for the immediate need for it, and maybe in that general area, I don't see why they couldn't maybe house their motorcycle in a closed garage, and then their RV and the one next to it, and or whatever else they might have that they just want to kind of store away. So I really like the discussion. I think we should really look at it, because we keep seeing this kind of just pop up here and there.
It's a huge demand. I mean, my house and all the mixed company, all this, I've got tucked away in corners, 4 tractors, I mean, just blah, blah, blah. I was on 1 acre home site or half acre home site, just away.
And you don't want to drive 25 miles away to
Trailing
store
something
stuff.
back to the house.
Yes.
People are talking, I was talking to a county council person this last week, and they were just talking about the level of crime that can take place in these storage units, and I do think that there's, I don't know what the answer is, but it is, Bloomington has just really got a big problem with drugs right now. And it seems that anywhere that is not really highly used is exploitable for that kind of behavior.
I guess I need to jack up the conversation by talking about trying to make the 2 things in place. I wasn't thinking to the depth of you or Jackie or some of the inside planning requirements. I was just kind of looking at it from the public, looking at the inside and not what's inside the fence.
Right.
I was thinking that if there was any compatibility between the 2 uses within the fence, the screening, the setbacks and all that stuff, I think they're fairly the same. And I don't want to get too deep into that, because I'm not very on the back.
I think that's a great.
It's a need, and again, these places need to be, instead of someone taking their boat from 30 gallon road and widening it around those roads and then giving it to, Oakland Road. If we have something, if we have locations that are more consolidated, that keep that camper or that boat from traveling on the county road, and the people would probably appreciate it more, for not having to haul it. I don't know, I just think it's a demand out there, people like their stuff at their houses, their properties aren't what they used to be, being able to store that stuff, and then if you've got limitations on what your outbuilding can be in your house and the footprint, you can't build anything else because you got, too many structures on your property as it is, and you don't want to stop you, what you want to. You may need those things even if you've got it.
Well, for my takeaway, it's like more where the location is, right? And, with that said, it's like, obviously, we don't want to carve out its own kind of zone overlay for this one use, but there might be enough particularly uses where it really does come down to the allowable use, and then we identify the areas that, are, what am I looking for? Ideal, for this use. And I mean, I don't know how many that we have that are just really kind of unique where there's only like a handful of uses, but I feel like this falls into that because we're really talking about the location that's ideal versus allowing it, in my opinion.
That's something that's interesting, is we've had boat storage in the ordinance, but it's RV storage that we've seen an uptick in requests for it. But one thing to note interestingly about too is, and I'm not privy to all of the conversations, obviously, that planners have had with property owners that are wanting RV storage. But in my experience, it's been, I would like to do RV storage at this site, is it permitted? And it's not the fact that maybe boat storage isn't permitted there, but it's just not the zone already for any type of storage. It's close to the left.
Right. And
there's not very many zones that are IP, LI, or obviously airport, where people are wanting to put the use. So it's an issue of, yeah, of course, we didn't have both RV storage in the ordinance, but it's also where people are wanting to put it, it's not going to be permitted anyways. That's something that I'm mentioning, because we do get a lot of comments and a lot of good discussion on the public level when the petition does move all the way up to the planning commission and county commissioners, because it requires a rezone, and all you hear about is people around that area that are like, we don't want storage going in here because it's more of a rural area. So if you think of it in that way, like Tom was saying, with the location, it's like we've already got these zones located for IP and LI.
Self-storage is only in LI and airport, so even fewer zones.
And I know it's all there, so LI will technically grow.
Right.
Visually at least.
Yeah, yeah. I don't, well, you know how I feel about this consultant.
I also wanna note, so like there's a demand for it, and I think that it's true that less travel on county roads could be a safety thing. Just in terms of like the storage of it, the employment generation of it, it doesn't go away once it's there. It's a very high revenue, business that I understand. That's why a lot of people want to do it, is that once it's there, there's no employees, it's somewhere you will, you get the gate code, you can come in, come out as you please, you pay a fee, it's pretty well set up to generate that income and not have a lot of employees. So once it's there, it's not gonna go away. So if you don't want it in certain areas of the county, I would also say, be mindful of that.
I have one additional question. Do overlays have to be contiguous?
What are you talking?
Just overlays like their environmental or eco overlay, like just over use the tool.
I mean, our
the
critical
tool.
watershed won't be.
So I'm curious if like some of these, really constitute having a unique overlay where we're actually identifying these particular areas in the county that kind of like the airport business overlay, that's not really a thing, but like, if it doesn't have to be contiguous, maybe we can actually isolate these, that these are an overlay where we're highly encouraging this use. So when it goes through kind of the rezone process and all of that, it just kind of, again, trying to think out of the box of how we can really promote the ideal space location versus just dropping them into these other zones that are going to be kind of more rampant throughout the county. So if overlays don't have to be contiguous, there might be certain use overlays we should be considering, because we do have a very unique county with a lot of topography and environmental concerns that we really want to do our due diligence to protect those. But again, I think we're going to continue to see these requests until, we meet some of the demand out there. So
I think we'd rather either have an additional zone district that would be preferred, or we could have a condition under LB that says cannot be done in the eco zone, or if that's what you're getting at.
well, I'm trying to get out where we can be more targeted of the location versus just adding it into an existing zone location, and that's why the overlay came to my mind. So
I think the one thing we've got to be cognizant of is the fact that all the constraints that we're putting on the land in the county, we're diminishing the amount of property we can utilize for a built environment. And that's the 15% slope requirements, that's ever expanding single conservancy areas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's something and that gets into affordable housing, development costs, sprawl, you have bigger places, you've got more areas you can build upon. I mean, it's not really ventured into that at all with the CDO, and that's a point that you're bringing up with the topography in certain areas of the county where the building is limited because of overlays and constraints. It's going to continue. We're going to continue to struggle. Right. I think your point about Jack, about finding zones to permit it is probably the most expedient way to do it, instead of trying to target where the people would think the best location would be based on all these factors, other than just how the terrain sits and what the neighborhoods are. I don't know, because they probably what the one thing that when we did the one it really surprised me. I thought that the development of that, and I think it's very reputable group, right? But I would think that there would be some sort of calculation that they would put, that you could put to number of residents in a geographic radius. How many storage units are typically required if you've got 650 homes? Just like schools, if you do a neighborhood, you can figure that one out of you figure a kid for every 10 houses is what it used to be. It's a very low number when you think about it, but that's a number that we would get from MCCSC. And it's a very low number, but if you follow a school bus, I just did this last week up in Indianapolis, I was doing on the school bus, and they don't stop at every house. It's like every 10, 15, 20 houses they stop, because you got kids in different age groups, well, all kinds of things going on. But I think that there's a density calculation that they must do for market analysis for how many homes within a certain square mile we can expect this many people to be well rentals.
But, okay, so one thing that, there have been a lot of topics that have come up, and one of them was affordable housing, and if we're using land for bulk storage that can't be used for other purposes, for people who want to employ people who might generate revenue for the county, people who might employ things, we should be judicious, number one. And number two, with regard to storage units, it seems to me like we are building storage units like mad on Curry Pike and out that way. And, I'm not sure that, the supply helps people with their quality of life. I mean, they may get stuff out of their house, but maybe it would have been cheaper and more affordable for them if they would have just just thrown it out to begin with, because it's gonna end up in the dumpster anyway, most likely. So, we're not doing our community that much favor by using our land for storage, in my opinion, for, we've done that, we've kind of indulged that. But maybe we could, I would sure hate to wake up one day and have there be a storage facility out my back window.
And yet, I agree with it, because I don't even- that was my whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there's a lot of things. Like, what is it based on? If someone sends that nickel, put the check, there's gotta be some sort of habits for it. So that's a different topic.
But if the temptation is this is higher profit than building a house, then the person who owns the land is gonna develop the storage units rather than a home that a family could, live in.
Curve would be interesting to see what the increase in density per acre is for housing versus the increase in something like a storage. Right? How do those curves,
Right.
if we put it in high rise or condominiums or, 6 units per acre, how curve is reflected with what, there may be some sort of, what's the term? There may be some sort of support, thank you, for utility, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's why I've been big on, well,
So this is the main plan commission.
No, but for ORC topics, I think if we can take a few things that we think might need more attention than, what we're able to give with a grant here.
Yeah, I was gonna just say, my comments, I think, are more towards the boat storage, because I think we're seeing those a lot more in an environmental sensitive area. And I don't have a perfect solution, but if we could really kind of be more selective on the location that is ideal for that, I think is great. I think Bernie is absolutely right with the RV, that maybe we could look at like some type of density and like hope that we're meeting, like the demand of people that might have RVs, because if they're not permitted to be in their HOA, they're parking them somewhere, right? So I understand kind of why we're here and why we're discussing this, but I just want to say a lot of my comments were kind of more thinking along the lines of boat storage. And I have one additional thing, and it goes back to your flyer, and I have to leave here shortly, so then that means we won't have a film. Could we send that out to like obviously county users, but other township trustees?
Yep, we have them on the list.
Do you? Okay, well, you're on top of it.
Well, anyone you want to send this to, it's online and.
I found it.
Okay, great. So, yes, we'll get the word out. All right.
jobs, guys.
Thank
Thank you.